Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we learn more about how to go from setback to soaring and the power of emotional resilience. This live speaker series is brought to you by Encore Retreats, which hosts these thought-provoking speaker series and leads content-rich experiential retreats around the world. I'm Jennifer Sullivan, co-owner and memory maker with Encore Retreats. And tonight we are so excited to introduce you to Sheila Battle. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, how are you, darling?
Great, thank you. Sheila's pretty amazing. She's an author, a TED Talk speaker, a transformational leader, and human services advocate. She embodies the idea of turning your passion into your work. And thankfully, Sheila's passion and her gift is helping other people, helping them grow from the inside out and become the best version of themselves. This passion led her to earning her master's degree in human services, as well as several certifications in counseling. Sheila is a fellow Philly girl and a lifelong learner who thrives on teaching organizations how to use cultural psychology within the workplace, and her professional career includes over 30 years of progressive leadership experience in both the public and private sectors. She mans a battle station every day, which we'll hear more about in a second. She's the creator of SoulCare curriculum, which is a collection of wellness teaching and tools that integrate into everyday life. She's the author of 15 Minutes of Grace, and she's currently wrapping up 2 new projects, an emotional wellness toolkit and a vision mapping workbook for married couples. Sheila's real life stories, her wisdom, and her warmth captivated us. She has a beautiful way of connecting with people on an intimate, intense, and individual level, and we cannot wait for you to hear from her directly. Sheila is being interviewed by my business partner, Lisa Waltuck, who's the content creator with Encore. Hey, Lisa.
Hey.
And just a couple housekeeping notes before we get started. We definitely want you to put questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat so we can keep better track of them. And then I'll ask Sheila your questions at the end of the interview. She's a huge proponent of Q&A, which she can tell you a little bit more about. So we definitely encourage you to be involved and interactive with her. And then we'll also send out a recording of this session via email within the next few days. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Lisa and Sheila.
Thanks, Jen. And thank you so much, Sheila. We're really looking forward to this discussion today. We are going to be talking about emotional resiliency, and we are committed to keeping this session to 30 minutes. We value your time. So I'm going to jump in and just ask you to tell a little bit of your backstory and specifically what you mean by manning a battle station every day.
Well, first, I want to thank you ladies for inviting me. This is an exciting time to be a helper. And so I'm excited to be able to share with you guys tonight. So my last name is Battle, and my home is affectionately referred to as the battle station. And what that looks like is my family and I have made a decision to live in open community, open-heartedly. And so we are an open resource. I used to say our house was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to our community, and that freaks my husband out a little bit. So I don't quite say it like that anymore, but we want to be a resource. And so whether it is a family in distress, a family in crisis, a family in need, they know that they can knock on our door.
And do they? Have you had people?
At 2 a.m. We are absolutely that household. I spent over 10 years as the superintendent of finance and administration for a local department of social services. And so when you're the person who knows who to call and you're the person who can get someone to answer the phone, it's not hard to become the resource house in the community.
And how did that affect your kids growing up? What did they think of that? And I know they're young adults now. How has it impacted their own sense of self?
So I raised my children telling them I do people, I don't do pets. So instead of my kids asking for animals, they would bring over their friends. And so if like I said, if there's a need, my kids are so used to this life that they don't know how to live any other way. I tell people I grew up in the Kool-Aid house and now I live in the Kool-Aid house. And so we're just that family where you can come with whatever the needs are, and we walk alongside you until we can get you to a place of peace.
That's great. Now we're kind of going through, I'm in the Bay Area. We're going through some job loss. There's some burnout. There's some, ramifications from COVID, economic fluctuations, a lot of things going on. How are you seeing this show up in your work, and how are you directing people through it?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do a lot of deep dive work into is this idea about emotional resilience, emotional wellness. And nothing is disturbing the peace like the landscape that we're living in right now. And so everything from job loss by chance or by choice, because we have quiet quitters and we have people moving about, to helping people define this difference between depression and anxiety and which tools to use for which thing. All of this has been about how do we come together and how do we allow for connection to help us heal and grow through the seasons of life that we're in. Some folks were living a Disney life. Things were fine, everything was good. They had jobs and money and marbles and chalk, right? And then something happened. And for a lot of people, it's been one of the loneliest seasons, even coming out of the pandemic. And the research is saying that loneliness is one of the roots of all of what we're seeing on the mental health side and on the emotional wellness side. And so this idea of giving people new tools, helping people refresh the tools that they have, saying to people, it's okay if the tools you were using before don't work for this season in your life. All of that is part of this work. And saying to people, oh, it's okay if you're not okay, but you don't have to stay that way. And so let's wrap language around what's going on with you so that you can ask for what you need.
If loneliness is such an issue and we've been isolated at home, many people are still working from home or only going into the office 1 or 2 days a week. And you're saying we need to go through this with others or combat that loneliness. How do we do that now, with this particular landscape?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with a commitment to do the inner work, right? So it's one thing for me to be on this Zoom with you and we talked before everyone else came on. And if I feel like, I'm wondering how she's really doing, right? I should have some sense of affirmation that I can come to you, right? But it's so much better if you say, hey, I'm really struggling right now. I know that we're going to talk about some tools and how, but I'm a big person that thinks that we should ban the word fine. We should stop saying we're fine when we're not. We should stop saying things are okay when they're not. And if we can help people, like I said, wrap language around where they are, how they feel, then they can accurately describe what they need. And then we can show up for each other in a way that combats that loneliness. I don't think that there's a prescription that's one size fits all. I think people who are in a space of loneliness or acknowledging their loneliness due to death and grief and loss in that way, that's a different set of tools than someone who's lost their job and they're used to having a work community. We teach that grief isn't about death, but it's about loss. And for a lot of us, we've lost a lot of things. For some of us, we lost 2020.
Right.
We lost the whole year. We lost the whole year. We had dreams, we had goals, we had aspirations, we had trips, we had plans, and none of that happened. And we haven't quite figured out how to get our footing back yet. And so, yeah, I do think loneliness, I agree with the science and I agree with the reports that are coming out. I think loneliness is huge. I think it's its own epidemic. And I think that we're going to have to be really, really careful about paying attention and tuning in and allowing space for people to share just how lonely they are.
I think there's a lot of conversations that have been going on around vulnerability. So if somebody asks how you're feeling and you're not feeling that great, and you say that is being vulnerable. And we know this generation that's kind of, I don't want to just prescribe it to one generation, but a lot of people are connecting because they are more vulnerable. So there's the bravery to be vulnerable with somebody else, but also on the receiving end, how if somebody is very honest with you, how you respond. Are both the vulnerable person and the person responding? Can you talk about those two roles in terms of resiliency?
Yeah, I think that's why we have to start with our own inner work, right? So it's not helpful if someone's vulnerable if the person that they're talking to isn't a safe place for them to land. And the only way that you can be a safe place for someone to land is to have a commitment to your own inner work. And so as we're on this journey together, because we're all still in this together, as we're on this journey together, it takes courage. It takes a lot of bravery to be able to say, you know what, am I really showing up for myself the way I need to? And if I am, or if I feel like I'm doing pretty good in that area, am I showing up for the people who sit at the table of my life, the people who are in my community, the people who are in my family? And am I able to show up for them in a way that is selfless and not self-full, right? And if I can do that, do I have the tools to offer so that I can be of service and of help to that person? So it's always going to start with this inner work. It's always going to start with put your oxygen mask on first, right? It's always going to start with those self-check-ins, those things that we need to do in order to take good care of ourselves. I think this whole pandemic proved just how much we weren't taking good care of ourselves, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in all of the ways. But there's a chance for us to do better.
Right. And that guarding was maybe the emotional numbness that you talk about, right?
Yes,
that isn't allowing us to feel.
Yeah. I have a client, she lost her mother transitioned before the pandemic. And she kept saying, I just need to get away. If I could just get away for 3 days, I could figure out how to grieve. And she couldn't get those 3 days because then the world shut down. So what did she do? She numbed her grief. She numbed her pain. And coming out of all of this now, her behaviors are those of someone who has been through a traumatic experience and she's suffering from PTSD.
Right.
And so, we wanted to relegate PTSD to military, but it's happening everywhere. It's really happening everywhere. And it's an opportunity for us to use those tools that we know work and employ them in these situations so that we can be a support while we're making sure that we're taking good care of ourselves at the same time.
So we've danced around this a little bit, but why don't we get into the tools and how to use them? I think because that's applicable to everything that you've been talking about. Yeah.
So this idea about submitting to the inner work, being committed, and everybody has to figure out, what does that look like for them in the season of life that they're in? For some people, there are spiritual practices. For some people, there's mindfulness. For some people, they journal. All of those tools are great. But what we encourage is a toolkit, because usually what happens is if you're a journaler until you're not. If you meditate until you don't, right? And so if you have a diverse mixed bag of things, then you don't have to stick to one thing and make that the medicine, right? You can pull things together and figure out, okay, for the season that I'm in now, what's working for me. I think the feeling wheel is one of the things that I would totally toss out to your audience and say, go online, find a copy of the feeling wheel. Dr. Gloria Wilcox has probably the most traditional feeling wheel. There are lots of them out there now, but hers is great because it offers you an opportunity to really map out how your feelings grow and progress, how they turn into other emotions and other behaviors, right? So I encourage everybody, get a copy of the feeling wheel, print it out, tape it to the bathroom wall, put it in your cubicle, put it somewhere where you have to look at it all the time. And here's why, because it will remind you to check in. It will remind you to say, okay, wait, where am I? Right? I think the four major components of the feeling wheel that she uses are on most of them. It's mad, glad, sad, and scared. So if you can't figure out all of the other, like, more detailed emotions, are you mad? Are you sad? Are you glad? Or are you scared? I like her feeling wheel because then she also adds peaceful and powerful, which are also two emotions that we can step into. And then there's a spread of additional descriptors after that. Another thing that I want to encourage people to do is really think about how you're memorializing your life. What's the story that you want to tell? Is it full of the details around the pain? Or are you integrating the moments of joy, the moments of revelation, the moments of connection? So as we look back over the last 3 years, let's not memorialize all of it in a way that makes us sad, mad, and scared. But let's also take some time to step into the silence, to really think back, really reflect, go back over those journals, go back over those things that you wrote, look at it again, and then figure out, how do I want to memorialize this so that I take the best out of it and use it to source me into my future?
Are these things a little predictable? In other words, if I'm an optimist, am I mostly going to memorialize myself by looking at the positive? And if I'm a pessimist, am I mostly going to memorialize myself by looking at the negative? Or are you saying it's more fluid, or we can have more intention around how we present ourselves or how we understand ourselves?
I'm extending an invitation to be more fluid about it, because where we land has everything to do with how we're able to show up for someone else. So if you are the optimist, you might show up over optimistic in a setting that requires a little more solemnness, right? If you're a pessimist, you could show up in a situation with some negativity where positivity is really the elixir of the moment, right? And so what we want to do is just, first of all, get people in the habit of thinking about what they're thinking about as they reflect, right? Because sometimes what we're memorializing isn't actually true. It's not 100% true that it happened that way. And so we want to get our story straight, right? Get your story straight and own that story, but own all of it. Own the joy and own the pain. Own the revelation that comes, right? And own the mistakes where you missed it. Pull it all together, right? And then when you reflect back, have a bigger picture, one that isn't quite so victimizing. Yeah, because there's some victor elements in every story if we sit in the silence and pull them out.
I love your notion of recover versus repair. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we teach a lot about that, because I think when there has been a break in trust, there's been disappointment, grief, sadness, all of those things. We're so busy wanting to feel better that we rush to recover without doing the work of repair. And repair, when we work with couples, isn't as simple as just saying, I'm sorry, right? Repair also has to do with mindset. It has to do with how we view, how we see other people. What's the lens that we're using? Is it time to change lenses? Is it time to see a different way? And to commit to that. And so this idea of repair really is about, I don't just want to say sorry. I want to make sure that if there has been a tear, that we've repaired it, that we've come back together, that our connection has been rekindled and resecured in a way that we don't just gloss over it with apologies and recovery and wanting to feel better, but we actually do the work of reconciliation.
Do you have any examples or anecdotes that you can share around some of these ideas in the toolkit?
Wow. So we have a lot of stuff in the toolkit. One of them is an acronym, Please Stop and Be Glad. So please stop and be glad. All of those letters represent a step in emotional wellness. So some things are just as simple as the P stands for physical health, right? So physical health has been highlighted just because of all the things that have been happening over the last several years. But how many times have you made a doctor's appointment and not kept it? Or how many times have you said, oh, I really need to go to the dentist and didn't make the appointment at all? And so we teach there are 4 seasons, right? So you should make a primary appointment, right, with your primary doctor just to get an overall checkup on your health. You should make a dentist appointment, an eye appointment, and a therapy appointment. And that should just happen every year like clockwork. And it's not just enough to make the appointment. You have to show up. You have to show up.
I think it's interesting that you included therapy, which, clearly in this context is health for the mind. And once a year, I, at least from what I know, people are usually see a therapist once a week or not at all. And so is this once a year notion just a health checkup? Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Yeah, so more people are in therapy now than have ever been before, but there's still a large number of people who have not stepped into that space. And so this is an invitation for them to say, even if you're not ready to do the deeper work, at least get a checkup, at least make it part of your maintenance, at least get used to the idea of what this would be like. For some people, they've never experienced it. And so there's a lot of fear wrapped around it. But what if you could just go once a month and just check in with somebody? And it not necessarily be that deep dive into all of those things, but at least it would be an introduction when you're ready to do that.
Are there therapists who do that, who aren't going to say, oh, yes, we should, spend once a week together? Are there really people that would just see you once a month or once a year and just do a check-in and see where you are and help guide you a little bit for that year?
Yeah. And the reason is because now there's content around what that therapist should talk to you about, right? And what that conversation should be, what things you could work on. Of course, the hope is that you would go, oh, okay, I have homework. Let me call them back at least once a quarter or once a month or whatever. The other thing is, therapy is expensive. It's expensive. And so it's one of those things where we would rather you do it once than not do it at all. Some people's health insurance doesn't allow, for all of the sessions that they need anyway, like you get 8 and then you got to pay out of pocket. And so all of those factors, but the idea around including therapy in that was for those who just haven't been at all or who are opposed to it out of fear or whatever reason they might have. Yeah.
Right. Now, is setting boundaries one of the aspects of the toolkit?
Yes. So we talk a lot about boundaries and balance being the elixirs to burnout and compassion fatigue. And so balance is the elixir to burnout because burnout has to do with my internal. I'm tired, I'm overworking, I'm not eating enough, I'm not sleeping enough, I'm not taking good care of myself. And all of these things contribute to what the World Health Organization is calling a disorder. Like we're at that stage now where you're going to be able to go to your doctor and get a note and the doctor is going to take you out of work for 2 weeks because you're in burnout, right? So the elixir to that is balance. How do I create greater balance in my life? How do I look at the 4 quadrants of my life? What am I over stimulated in and what am I understimulated in? Where am I taking good care and where am I not? For compassion fatigue, that's external. Compassion fatigue is all about secondary trauma. It's not about things that happen directly to you, but it's the effect of you being impacted by someone else's trauma, right? And so you want to have good balance in your life around, okay, how much of somebody else's story can I handle, right? And when do I need to pull back a little bit? So all of that to me kind of settles on the whole 15 minutes of grace thing, because if you're doing the 15 minutes of grace, you can figure out, am I in burnout or am I in compassion fatigue? Am I depressed or am I anxious? And it doesn't, you don't even have a sense of awareness until you can get quiet with yourself and ask yourself those questions so that you can see where you are.
So give us a description of the 15 minutes of grace.
Yes. So 15 minutes of grace is an invitation to create sacred space in your day where you are not judged, condemned, or compared to anyone else. It's not something that you just automatically know how to do. It's a practice, and it takes practice. And I tell people, I have folks say to me, wait, you want me to be with myself alone for 15 minutes? And yeah, and folks who, have that immediate objection or feel stressed around that are the primary folks who need to step into it. It's not meditation in the way that you lift a thought and let it be like a cloud and float on. It is more of challenging a thought. Am I condemning myself? Am I comparing myself? And if I am, let me unlearn how to do that. Help me figure out, why am I doing that? Who am I comparing myself to? Why am I condemning myself? Why? All of that. It gives you a chance to do some inner work without all the trappings of distraction.
So it's very active. Your mind is very active during this time.
Absolutely. And I think that's why people lean more towards 15 minutes of grace than mindfulness, because there's a thought around mindfulness that I have to shut my brain off, or I have to stop thinking my thoughts. And in 15 minutes of grace, it's the complete opposite.
And do you emerge with clarity?
Yes, you do. I think the biggest gift of 15 minutes of grace is getting to know the voice of your own inner witness. We have so many voices competing for time and attention in our heads and in our minds and in our spirits. And the question is, where's your voice in all of that? Do you even know? Have you lost the sound of your own voice because of the noise of others? And 15 minutes of grace gives you a chance to do that.
Is there magic in the number 15 as opposed to 10 minutes or 20 minutes?
No, actually, it kind of just came out like that. I was teaching a session and I said 15 minutes, and then it just kind of stuck. But the truth is that it takes you 9 minutes to settle down. It takes 9 minutes to settle down. So once you get past the 9 minutes, I'm only giving you another 6 minutes to think about what you're thinking about, which is maybe a little less intimidating.
So if our minds are pretty active, what are we settling down from? Aren't we asking those questions, or we're taking some time to listen to our own inner voice?
Yeah, it's taking the time to listen and seeing what comes up. It's not about judging it or anything like that. It's, okay, am I condemned? It really is those questions. When you think about what you're thinking about, what is the thought? What is the thought? What am I thinking, right? Am I in stinking thinking, or am I in growth thinking? Where am I? And what's sourcing what I'm thinking? Where did I get this thought from? Where did I get this idea from? And giving yourself permission to just kind of unpack it. Is that true? That's the most powerful question you can ask yourself. If you're in the silence, if you're in meditation, if you're doing 15 minutes of grace, the biggest question, the most powerful question you can ask yourself is that true? Because sometimes we're ruminating about a thing and it's not even true.
And what about people who've never meditated, who've never really kind of sat still and listened to their own inner voice? How would they even start?
5 minutes.
Something like this.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. I tell folks, set a timer on your phone, or use hourglasses. I have hourglasses all over my house. So when people come here, if they're on 10, I give them an hourglass, and then we come back and we talk about it, right? But I think 5 minutes is where you start. First of all, it's make a decision that you're going to do it. Because I think we have a lot of decision fatigue too, right? So make some decisions that are for your benefit. So you make the decision, I'm going to try this. When we issue this challenge, we ask people to do it for 7 days. So for 7 days, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make an appointment with myself, and I'm going to keep it. And I'm going to do it for 5 minutes. And I'll keep a journal close by just in case I have a thought I need to jot down. But the idea is, what am I thinking about? Because these thoughts are producing the life that I'm living. Right. And if any part of that life isn't fulfilling, isn't filled with awe and wonder, then how do I get that back? You got to figure out how to get that back. And I don't think you can do that unless you get quiet.
And then from this, are we building kind of a track record for showing up for ourselves? How does that kind of play into the whole emotional, I'm bringing back to this emotional resiliency idea?
Yeah, one of the most critical reasons people suffer with confidence is because they have a track record of not honoring their word to themselves. So when you can show up for yourself, when you can say, you know what, I am gonna go for a walk after dinner. No, I'm not gonna run 3 miles, but I am gonna just walk around my block after dinner. It's the small things. It's every time you tell yourself yes, and you honor your word to yourself, you honor your commitment to yourself, then guess what? You build a different track record. You build a different narrative in your psyche that says, no, I'm for me. And I'm not waiting for someone outside of me to come do what needs to be done. I can do it. I can do it. And I can do it in baby steps. And then I can walk and then I can run.
And have you found that this is successful for people, or is it different methods for different folks?
All around the world. I literally get emails from all around the world, people saying, I was scared to do this, or it was hard to do this, or I couldn't do the whole 15 minutes the first 7 days. I could only do 5 minutes, and I did 5 minutes for 2 weeks, and then I worked up to 7 minutes. And I haven't had one person say that they've done it and it was the worst thing they could have ever done. Everybody who comes back says, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know what would happen, but I'm the better for it. I'm different. And I can feel myself changing in a way that's good and positive.
Yeah, I think that I think it's a great tool and something that people can try. And I also love that for people who have tried meditation and it hasn't worked for them, I like that this is an alternative with such a potentially positive outcome for them, especially if you have a running mind. Use that for good, use it to understand yourself. Don't be angry with yourself if you can't sit with no thoughts in your head or meditate, So I think this gives a great alternative. So thank you for that.
It's an act of self-compassion.
Yeah, right. Right.
Sheila, thank you so much. We've got several really, really thought-provoking questions. I realize we're at our 30 minutes now, so I'm going to ask 1 or 2 of them, and then we will send the rest to you. And Sheila has graciously offered to respond, and we'll include the answers in the recording that we'll email out after this. So question number 1, if you feel like you are trending toward the end of your career, 10 years-ish, and you aren't feeling fulfilled, where do you go from here?
Oh, I love this question. I love this question. So for those who are in transition professionally, one of the greatest questions that you can take into 15 minutes of grace is, what is mine to do? What is mine to do? For some folks, these transitions are the best thing that could have happened. And I know that that's hard to hear, especially if you've, been on a job and been committed and loyal and faithful and then lost your job through no fault of your own, right? That's really hard. And yet there's still this opportunity. There's still this opportunity to say, what is mine to do? Why am I on the planet right now? Of all the times in the dispensation of time that I could have been on the planet, why am I here now? What's around me that's tapping me on the shoulder, trying to get my attention? And then what can I do? How do my gifts and talents contribute to resolving, helping, serving, all of that? And I think as we move closer and closer towards what is ours to do, the opportunities to do it avail themselves. And so that could be a change in career, not just a change in job, but a complete change in vocation. I think about how many people wanted to be XYZ when they were little girls or they were little boys, but they took the job that was necessary instead of the job that was needed. So if you're in transition, ask yourself, what is mine to do? What am I here for? And what am I gifted to do? What problem do I solve? When I show up, what do people ask me to do? People used to say, what would you do if you could do it for free? Don't do it for free. Please don't do it for free. Let people pay you so that you can take care of yourself and your family, but lean into what that is, what that means, what that looks like, and then take courageous baby steps until you can fully step into it.
I love it. This is one of the things we talk a lot about at our Thriving Through Transitions retreats. So the last question I'll ask live, because I want to see your reaction, is, are you available to be my therapist? Not me, somebody in the audience.
I am available to walk alongside you in therapy. I think that if you have a therapist, that you should really shop for one. You shouldn't necessarily just take the person that your insurance will cover or whatever. I walk alongside a lot of people who are in therapy. They tend to focus on how you got here, and I tend to focus on where you want to go. And so it's a beautiful partnership to help people. So yes, I would absolutely love to meet you.
Great, thank you. There are so many other really rich questions, and as I said, we'll honor them. We will ask them of Sheila and include them in the recording that we'll send out. And Sheila, thank you again for sharing your amazing story and time with us. We sincerely appreciate it.
This has been so wonderful. Thank you for the gift of presence and the opportunity to share.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sheila.
And thank you to everyone who joined us virtually tonight. We really value your feedback. So a short survey will pop up on your screen at the end of the webinar. And I also want to tell you real quick about two other events that we're planning. In early September, we're hosting the retreat that I mentioned. It's an in-person immersive retreat here in Virginia, and it's called Thriving Through Transitions. As of today, there are only 5 spots left, so we're super excited about that. And then in late September, we're hosting a multi-day virtual workshop on how to rock the empty nest. So we'll have multiple speakers sharing their expertise on finances and wellness and relationships and career or retirement planning. It's a really great time to think about what was your question? What are we here to do?
And Sheila will be part of that
yes,
conference.
We're excited about welcoming her back for that. So if you want to join us for any or all of these adventures, join our mailing list or follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And we thank you again for giving us your precious time. I hope you all have a fantastic evening.